Hello everyone, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing another Mystery Monday, and before we get into it I do actually have an update on a previous case that I've done which I wanted to let you guys know about because I feel like it's great that one of our unsolved mysteries has been solved. So it is the disappearance of Zeb Quinn. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. I will link it down below if you haven't. But Nils was actually arrested for the murder of Zeb Quinn, which I think is great that it has been solved and there is closure for the people around him. And yeah, I just thought I would let you guys know because I think it's really interesting that it's been solved. I've also heard some updates on the John Benet Ramsey case, that maybe that has been solved as well, so I'm going to look into that a little bit more and see what's happening there, because it would be incredible if that case was solved, especially since she is so young and her parents and everyone around her deserves some closure. I also just want to mention that I'm considering changing Mystery Mondays to doing them still once a week, but not necessarily on Mondays, because every time I upload one late or something like that, like I upload one at 9 p.m. instead of 7 a.m. I get a million questions about it and a million accusations and people being rude to me because it's late, and I missed last week's one. I had so many people being so rude to me about it, so I feel like maybe if I just change it from not Monday so that I can give myself time and not force it to be done on Monday, and because I do get really carried away with the research and I just keep researching and researching and researching, so that way if that does happen I can upload it on a Wednesday if I do get carried away with researching, you know what I mean? But just a thought, I'm not entirely sure yet. I just want to see what you guys think of that idea, so there'll still be one a week, but I just won't be getting abused for uploading it a few hours late. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get into today's video. I did briefly mention this in last week's Mystery Monday, the previous Mystery Monday, and it is the disappearance of Maura Murray. So Maura was born on the 4th of May in 1982 in Massachusetts to Fred and Laura Murray, who actually got divorced when she was 6 years old. On February 9th in 2004, at 21 years of age, Maura actually disappeared. She was in a car crash, and when police arrived at the scene, there was no one there. The car was locked and Maura was never seen again. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. So in 2004, when Maura disappeared, I will mention that social media was not a huge thing like it is today. The internet was not a huge thing. Facebook had just started. Mobile phones were not massive like they are now, where everyone is just always on their mobile phones and it's so easy to get information about anything. So when people started looking into this case, like people from the internet, they were looking at it a little bit later, so the information sometimes can get a little confusing, and it was really easy to get lost back then as well, just like disappear off the grid, because of the fact that these things were not big and it wasn't easy to find out everything about someone. So I thought I would mention that before we get into things. I also want to go into a little bit of background information on Maura and her life and what she was like before she disappeared. So she was a good runner. She was a track state champion and she had a whole bunch of medals and prizes and stuff like that from when she used to run track in high school. When the case first came to light, Maura's family and her friends kind of tried to paint her as a little bit of a saint, and like she was this all-American girl and she was just a great person all around, which I think she was, like a good person, like a nice heart. But it wasn't really the case. She did seem to get into trouble a lot of the time. So Maura was bulimic, and I'm not at all trying to say that because she was bulimic she was not a saint. I'm just giving you guys some background information on her. She was bulimic. She also enrolled at West Point University, which she then withdrew from so that she didn't get expelled, because they were going to expel her because she was caught stealing makeup. She then went and enrolled at UMass Amherst. While she was there, she also got in trouble for credit card fraud. So she stole someone's credit card, and the way that she described it was she found a receipt in the bin at a university party, and then it kind of had like the numbers of the credit card on there or something, which either is a lie and she didn't get it that way, or this was a really old school receipt. She was then charged with improper use of a credit card under $250 because she spent under $250. Weirdly enough, the only thing that she spent on this credit card was food, and she was buying food in like mass quantities. Like when you look at what she was buying, it was kind of like she was buying enough for 2 people, or maybe she was buying something for a party, or it could have been because she was bulimic, which would also explain the quantity of food that she was purchasing. And on the topic of the eating disorder, apparently her family had said that sometimes while she was at family dinners and eating with her family, they would kind of make offhanded comments about her bulimia. They would say, why do you bother making room for food if you're just going to throw it up later, which is horrible, absolutely horrible that they said these things to her. She seemed to have a pretty difficult relationship with her family. She had 2 sisters. One of them was older, her name was Julie. There might have been some jealousy there because Julie went to West Point, she actually graduated, and it seemed like she was kind of just a little bit disappointed in Maura sometimes for the way that she had been acting and getting into trouble so often and getting expelled from West Point. And she also had a younger sister named Kathleen who also got into a bit of trouble. She was arrested for growing marijuana and she had been in and out of rehab. But back on topic, for the credit card fraud, Maura actually ended up just going on probation for it. They were going to take her to trial, but she only went on probation for, I think it was like a 3 or a 6 month period. And when they did come and confront her about it, they took a photo. The police officer took a photo of her outside of her dorm room, which I will show you guys. And it's just kind of a creepy photo. This is a very popular, I guess you would say, photo in this case because she just looks different. She looks scary almost, like it's a scary photograph to look at. Okay, so now let's talk about the events that happened leading up to the disappearance, because that is where the bulk of the information is, obviously, because after she disappeared there's nothing, like they've disappeared, there's nothing you can really look into, but beforehand that is kind of what you look at to track maybe where this person has gone or what has happened to this person. On Thursday, February the 5th, which was 4 days before her disappearance, she received 2 phone calls while she was at work at her shift. So she worked as a security guard at the campus at UMass, and it was kind of like a desk job. She sat at a desk as a security guard, and she did this often late at night. At 10:30 p.m. she was on her break and she spoke to her sister Kathleen on the phone. Apparently they just spoke about her sister's relationship problems. She was going through a hard time with her fiance and they were just talking about that. And then at 1 a.m. she had an anonymous phone call according to the phone records, and shortly after her boss came and saw her at like 1:20 a.m. or something like that and said that she was just distraught. She was looking out the window. I think she might have been crying. I saw some places said that she was crying, some said that she wasn't, and she just looked very distraught basically. The only thing that she said to her supervisor was sister. So she was too distraught to say what about her sister or just anything at all. All she said was sister. That was the only clue she gave. Her supervisor ended up walking her back to her dorm, where she didn't even want to leave her alone because she just thought that it wasn't a good idea to leave her alone in the way that she was. But Maura insisted that she was fine and she had a roommate, which was a lie. She did not have a roommate, so that might have just been something so that she could be left alone, I guess. Now, something weird about this is that there was actually a hit and run right at UMass 30 minutes prior to her supervisor, Maura's supervisor, coming in and seeing her all distraught. A student or a man named Patrick Vassie was hit right like in the vicinity of UMass, and he suffered severe head trauma from this. He was in a coma for an entire month, and when he woke up he had no idea how long he was in a coma. He thought he was 27 years old, and he's still alive and apparently still suffers from this head trauma. He still has side effects from this, so it was a pretty bad crash. Now, some people think that maybe Maura had something to do with this. There is absolutely no evidence to support this, but some people think that maybe Maura had something to do with this, and that's why she was acting so distraught, because she had just hit someone with her car and then left, as it was a hit and run, and maybe that's why she was so upset. This could also be the reason for her anonymous phone call. She could have been calling them about the hit and run that she just had, but as I said, there's no evidence. Nobody knows if this was true. It's just a theory. Because I mean, why would she be so distraught about her sister if they were just talking about her relationship problems? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now moving forward to Saturday the 7th of February, Fred, Maura's father, came into town to visit her. Apparently they went used car shopping. He kept saying and always said that her car was running really badly, so they went shopping together to look for a new one.
I was up visiting her for the weekend. She needed a new car, and we spent the afternoon looking around for a car to buy. We decided what type. That night we went out to eat. She got a call from one of her friends, and she was going back to the dorm to spend some time with a friend.
Nobody can confirm whether they actually went used car shopping or not, but that is what Fred has always said, is that they went used car shopping. They then later that night went to dinner. That was my air freshener, sorry. Went to dinner with Maura's friend Kate Markopoulos, I believe her name is, and she, when she was interviewed and asked about it, she said that they never said anything about going used car shopping, which is strange because you think that that is what you talk about. Like, you go to dinner and you talk about things that have happened, and you talk about like what you did on your day, like, yeah, we were looking for a new car because mine is not bad. Like, you think that would have come up in conversation, but apparently not. Kate had no idea whether or not they did actually go used car shopping that day, so who knows, they probably did, I guess. So after they went to dinner at the local pub, Fred drove Maura and her friend to a liquor store, and this is where the story kind of splits into two stories. Fred has kind of changed his story here in different interviews. At first, he said that he took them there and he just waited in the car for them, but then he ended up changing his story and saying that he actually went in and told them to hurry up, and it didn't really matter what they got, they just needed to hurry up. Anyway, after this, Fred ended up staying at a motel while he was around, and Maura dropped him off there because he allowed Maura to borrow his car because the two girls were going to a party that night, which also seems very weird because why, like, he had a brand new, I think it was like a Toyota Corolla. He had a brand new one, like it was a very new car, and he just took them to a liquor store, so obviously they were going to be drinking at this party, and he allowed her to drive his brand new Toyota Corolla to this party where she was going to be drinking, and then she was going to go back to her dorm and stay the night at her dorm and drive the car back tomorrow, which is just, I'm not sure. I don't know if that seems weird to anyone else, but that seems like a very weird thing to do to me. Like, why wouldn't he just drop her off? Or so, as I said, the original plan was for her to then drive home after the party and stay at her dorm and then drop the car off tomorrow morning. But that didn't end up happening. She ended up leaving the party at about 2:30. She was seen telling people that she was going to be leaving, so this was at 2:30 a.m. and she said that she needed to drop her car off to her dad. And when she left, a few people said that she left with a boy. They didn't know who. No one could give a name or a description of the guy, but a few people said that she did leave with a guy, and then a few more people said that she just left alone and she didn't go with anyone. Anyway, at 3:30 a.m. on the way to her father's motel, she was in a car crash and completely smashed up his new car because she struck a guardrail on Route 9 and just, that was it. She just ruined his new car. But apparently after that, she was dropped off at the motel by police, and he didn't know that she was there. So I don't know if there was two beds or if there was one bed in the motel. I couldn't exactly find it out. I don't think anyone knew if there was one or two beds in the motel, but she went there and she stayed there, and he didn't know that she was there. She even used her dad's phone to call her boyfriend, Billy Roush.
A distraught Maura calls her long-distance boyfriend, Billy Roush, who is stationed in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Billy later shares the conversation with his mother, Sharon.
So she calls Billy, and he talked with her, he calmed her down, and then he promised her that he would call her back later in the day. From the moment I met her, I knew that she loved my son.
At 4:49 in the morning, and told him about the accident. They were really close, so she called him up and told him, but they were both cheating on each other, her and Billy. He was having an affair and Maura was having an affair. She was cheating on him with her track coach, who she no longer did track, so it kind of wasn't weird, but they still didn't want to tell anyone that they were having the affair or that they were together or anything like that. So yeah, they kind of had a complicated relationship, but apparently despite this, they were still really close, which is why she called him at 4:49 a.m. to tell him what had happened. So then on Sunday morning, when Fred woke up, Maura told him about the crash and the fact that she had ruined his car. And from what he said, he wasn't mad about it at all. He was really calm about it, and he says that this is because he knew that insurance would cover it. I don't know about you, but my dad, if I crashed his car, would be so angry, especially if it was new. My dad doesn't even let me drive his car. So yeah, apparently he was really cool and calm about it.
You know, wasn't actually all that upset. I was concerned with how I was going to get back to my job because it was Sunday and all the car places are closed. So we made the arrangements, you know, and I asked her to call me that evening. You know.
And then he ended up renting a car and dropping Maura back off at her university before he left for Connecticut. Apparently, he was more angry about, or more focused on the fact that he didn't know how he would get to work the next day than anything. Like, he wasn't even mad about the fact that the car had been crashed by his daughter, or the fact that she was probably drink driving. Before he dropped Maura off, he told her that she needed to grab these forms. They were like register of a motor vehicle accident forms, and they were gonna call each other on Monday night and go through them and fill the forms out together. So on Monday, the 9th of February, the day that she disappeared, the first thing Maura did that we know of is she looked up maps on MapQuest. She was looking up directions to Berkshire and Burlington, Vermont. She also emailed her boyfriend and told him that she was sorry that she didn't answer his calls or his texts, and that she just wasn't in a good place to talk at the moment, and that she would call him later, and signed off saying that she loved him. And then she called up and made an inquiry about a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where her family had previously stayed, but they ended up refusing her. They didn't let her stay there. So then she called a fellow nursing student for reasons unknown. And then at 1:24 p.m. she emailed her work saying that she wasn't going to be able to come in for a week because there was a death at the family. And this is weird because her family has confirmed that nobody in her family died. So this was just a blatant lie. And she said that she would contact her work when she was back. At 2:05 p.m. she called a number which is a pre-recorded booking information about booking hotels in Vermont and booking, just renting things in Vermont, like ski information, all of that kind of stuff. She listened to it for about 5 minutes before she called her boyfriend, and he didn't answer, so she ended up just leaving a voicemail saying that they would talk later. So then she packed up her car. She had birth control pills, textbooks, she brought toiletries and clothes, kind of like all the stuff that you would need to go away for a week, I guess. The weird thing is she had also packed up her entire dorm. So everything was in boxes. All of her posters and her artwork off the wall had been taken down, and she actually left it in there. So it kind of looked like she was either packing up to leave, or maybe she thought that she would come back and get her stuff, or it possibly could have been still packed up from the winter break. So at 3:30 p.m. she left her dorm and she stopped at an ATM and took pretty much everything out of her bank account. She left like $1 or $2 in there so that it would stay open, but got everything out, left in cash, which was about $280 or something along those lines. And then she went to a liquor store. At the liquor store she bought vodka, Kahlua, a box of Franzia wine, and she bought Bailey's. And on the security footage that they had from the liquor store, they said that she was alone when she did all of this. She'd also at some point during that day picked up the registry of a motor vehicle accident forms because they were found in her car later on. And then there is a gap in time from this point until 4:37 p.m. which is the last known use of her phone. It was picked up, like pinged from a local cell phone tower that she called up her voicemail voicemail to check if she had any voicemails on it. No one knows where she was going or why she was going there, but about 7:30 p.m. she got into a car crash. On the accident report, the car was apparently facing west in the eastbound lane, kind of like she'd spun out. There was an ice bank off the side of the road, which people think that she went into and then kind of spun out, and her car was just parked facing the opposite way on the opposite side of the road. The area was really quiet, so there's no one in the area when this really happened that we know of, but there was a bus driver kind of following behind her. They weren't actually following her. They didn't get to the scene until about, I was listening to this podcast, which I will link below if you guys do want to hear it, and they said that they would have estimated that he got there about a minute to a minute and a half after the actual crash happened. So she was standing outside of her car and she was just looking really distraught, and this guy, the bus driver, said that she looked just so distraught. They did find a Diet Coke bottle in the car that smelled like wine, so she also could have been drunk, so she just looked like a mess overall when he saw her. So this guy, he was originally a suspect. His name is Butch Atwood, and he was cleared and found completely innocent, I'm pretty sure, but the police did speak to him and got his statement and everything, and what he said is that when he arrived at the scene, he got out of his bus and asked her if she was okay and if she needed him to call the police, and she was like, no, don't call the police, please don't call the police. Some people described it as she actually pleaded for him not to call the police. She said that she had already called the AAA, which was not true because the AAA has no records of her actually calling them. And not to mention that the reception there is absolutely horrible, so there's kind of no way that she would have been able to call them. It's like up in the mountains where she got into this crash, and there's just no reception, and he knew this as well. So when he left on his way home, or when he got home, he ended up calling the police and telling them what had happened. Now the strange thing about this is when Bush was given a photo of her to identify her, he was just like, this is not the girl that I saw. He did not think that it was her at all under any circumstances. He was just like, no, this isn't her. Eventually, after he studied the photo for a little while longer, he was like, oh, this could have possibly been her, and she just looked a little bit more shaken up at the time, and said that it's possible that it was her. But yeah, at first he was just like, no way. To be fair, they did give him like a school photo, and she was probably, you know, drunk or distraught or very scared and just, you know, so it could be the reason that she looked completely different. I know when I'm a mess, I probably look 100 times different than I do now or that I did at school. There was also another witness of this crash. It is a lady who just kind of like lived in the area, and she saw this out the window of her kitchen. She heard the crash, which is when she looked out and she saw the car. She said there was a whole flurry of activity kind of around the boot area of the car, and said that she also saw someone smoking a cigarette in the passenger seat, which she later recanted and said that she didn't think someone was smoking a cigarette, that this could have been a whole number of things. It could have been a reflection, it could have been more on her phone, maybe calling the AAA, which probably not, because there was no record of that, but if she did, maybe she was just on her phone in general and that's what she saw, the light in the passenger seat. But this lady was the one who actually called the police herself when she saw it, and she seemed really just certain in what she was saying. So really shortly after this, at about 7:46 p.m, the police arrived at the scene, which is when they found that the car was locked and there was no one around there. The whole front window had been smashed and the airbags had been deployed. They also saw a red liquid in the front of the car and also on the roof of the car, kind of like the wine in the back was the same color as red wine, so it could have been like maybe she was drinking it and she spilt it. They also found a Diet Coke bottle in there, which just reeked of wine apparently, so maybe she was drinking it and when she got into the crash it kind of spilt, and that could have been what the smell was from and what the red liquid was from. So I feel like it's safe to assume that she probably was drink driving. It seemed like she did do a bit of drinking. In the car, they did not find the Kahlua, they didn't find her debit or her credit card, and they didn't find her mobile phone, and they have never found any of these things. They are just gone. The only way they traced her mobile phone is because you can do that from like service providers and stuff. But they did find a book about climbing mountains in the White Mountains, and they found her maps from MapQuest, and they found her stuffed animal, her favorite stuffed animal. And also when they found the car. I will say that they did notice that some of the damages to the car were not consistent with what happened and the crash that she had, which leads back to maybe she was the one who was involved in the hit and run with Petrie Vassie. They also found that there was a rag stuffed into the exhaust pipe of the car. Now, when Fred, her father, went to go and speak to the police because he wanted to see the car and they didn't let him, he just told them, he was like, if you find a rag in the tailpipe, I told her to put that there. And he said that he told her to put that there because her car was old and it wasn't running well, which he has said before, that her car just wasn't running well, and that would help to stop it from sputtering and stalling, which, I don't know, it kind of seems weird to me. I would never put something in my exhaust pipe because then how is the exhaust gonna get out? It seems like a bad thing to do, but from what I've heard when I was listening to the podcast as well, they said that it happened, it was like an old trick, but I've never heard of it. I don't know, it just seems like a weird thing to do to me. If any of you guys know anything about cars, please let me know in the comments down below if that is like something that can help with your car stalling and sputtering, because I just know nothing about cars, but it just doesn't seem right to me, and from what I've researched, it doesn't seem right to anyone else either. But after Fred volunteered this information himself, he actually refused to be interviewed by the police for 2 years after the disappearance, and then when he finally did have an interview, he brought 2 lawyers with him, which is kind of sus, but I'm not here to judge how he dealt with things, but a lot of people do think that he is a bit suspicious with, he lied to the police and sometimes his story changes, and he didn't have an interview with them for 2 years and then came in with 2 lawyers, and that just seems a little bit sketchy. So anyway, back to the scene. The police ended up getting the car towed and had it impounded because at this point they didn't know that someone was missing. It wasn't like a crime scene, it was just a car that had been in an accident. Maybe there was a drunk driver from what they could tell, and it's not uncommon for drunk drivers to leave and flee the crime scene, so they just thought that that had happened, and maybe that they were hiding in the woods because they didn't want to be caught. And it was like 0 degrees there, but apparently this was like a mild night for that place. So it wasn't until 5:17 p.m. the next day that Maura was considered a missing person. Police at first in the morning called Fred and he didn't answer. It wasn't until they called, I think it was Kathleen, and then she called her father, and that's when he called in and he was like, yeah, what's up? And then she was considered a missing person at about 5:17 p.m. that night, and then they searched for her the next day. They used tracker dogs and they searched on foot, the police officers did, but they didn't find anything. One of the police dogs, the tracker dogs, was holding onto a scent from one of her gloves, which I did hear a police officer say that maybe they should have given them something that she wore more because she got this glove for Christmas or something, and maybe they should have given her like the dog clothes to smell her scent from. But he tracked this scent for about 100 yards, which I don't know what that converts to in like meters or kilometers, but he tracked her for 100 yards and then he just didn't find anything after that. The trail just stopped off. Another search was conducted 10 days later, and this was an air and ground search. They had cadaver dogs, tracker dogs, police, they even had helicopters with thermal heat detectors in them. But once again, they did not find anything related to Maura, and they didn't find Maura. Still to this day, she has not been found, so nobody knows if she's still alive or if she did die. Billy, her boyfriend, actually got a call after Maura's disappearance, which he thought was Maura sobbing, but turns out they tracked the number and it was someone from the Red Cross trying to get in contact with him. I don't really know what that's about. And then the search for Maura was expanded to a nationwide search because she's a runner. I mean, she could have left herself and gotten who knows how far, and the FBI also ended up getting involved in the case. Another thing I wanted to mention was on the 8th anniversary of Maura's disappearance, there was this really weird, creepy guy who uploaded a video to YouTube. The video has since been deleted and his entire account has been deleted, but I was reading this blog post about Maura and they actually have copies of it, so I will try and insert some clips here if I can find them again. And he just uploaded this video and he was just laughing really, really creepily. A lot of people think that maybe he was a troll and just wanted some attention and that he actually had nothing to do with this. And he's probably unrelated to the crime, but I thought it was worth mentioning because I read about it so much and it is really like a really creepy thing to do. So anyway, that is all of the information. No one knows what happened to Maura after that. There's a whole bunch of theories, like maybe she left herself. This kind of seems like it was a planned thing. She emailed into work. She was a good runner. She had the book about going into the mountains and climbing the mountains, so maybe she left herself. She was in a lot of trouble. Maybe she didn't want to get a drink driving fine and ruin her probation. She could have been scared and she didn't want to get expelled again, because that probably would have happened considering she was on probation and then a drink driving charge on top of that. She might have been so worried or so scared or felt guilty from the whole Petrie Vassie thing that maybe she was the one that had the hit and run, and she just felt so guilty and just needed to get away. Like, it did seem like she had quite a few problems in her life, so maybe she just decided she needed to start afresh and that she ran away. That's kind of the one that I think is the most possible, but I'm not 100% definite on any of the theories because they're also possible and it's such a weird case. Some people think that maybe she was abducted. Apparently the bus driver did see a few people driving past. I mean, any one of them could have taken her. She also could have gone into the woods hiding because she didn't want to get in trouble for drink driving, and maybe she died in the woods because it was very cold. Like I said, it was 0 degrees, so she may have gotten lost and she may have died, but they never found her body. But yeah, there is a whole bunch of theories and I have no idea which one I believe. I don't even know if I think that her dad was involved. I don't really, I just kind of think he was a little sus. Maybe he even helped her and knew that she was planning on running away, and that is why he's so sus. There was also a time when this case was related to the Brianna Maitland case, which I spoke about in my last Mystery Monday, because they were very similar cases. Brianna's car was found abandoned and crashed, and when they arrived at the scene, no one was there, but there was a whole bunch of her belongings in the car, and also they were both in a little bit of trouble. Brianna was interested in drugs and they were both around the same age, so yeah, it is a little bit suspicious. And they were pretty close together as well because Brianna was in Vermont, which is where Maura had maps and directions on how to get to Vermont. So yeah, some people, even her friends and stuff, think that she may have gone to Canada to start a new life because the Canadian border wasn't that far away. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you have any other theories or any other evidence that I may have missed, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love suggestions as well on what cases you would like me to do in my next Mystery Monday. As always, I hope you enjoyed. I will leave a link down below for the rest of my Mystery Mondays. I have an entire playlist of them. Please give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy and you want to see more Mystery Mondays, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye!